And as you're settling in, just allowing your breath to help you to just be here now, just relaxing into the now, becoming easy, becoming open. I'd like you to just bring to mind that challenge, that thing that you'd like to know more about, that thing you want to work on more, the thing you'd like more insight about. Just bring it to mind. Just be aware of it. And I'd like you to see yourself in it. See yourself, your human self, in the middle of this life experience with whatever this issue is. Just see it. See yourself going about your life with this issue, whatever it is. See yourself in the middle of it. Maybe just notice what it's like to be you with this issue, you know. Maybe notice the challenge or the struggle of it, or just where the barrier feels like it is sometimes. And now as you just notice your human self in the middle of this human experience, I'd like you to imagine that your consciousness can sort of float out of you, so that your human self is staying right there, your human part staying right there on the earth, experiencing its human thing, but your consciousness sort of drifts out of the top of you, and it floats all the way up to where you believe your soul might reside, somewhere higher. And now your consciousness and your soul, you're looking down at the human part experiencing this. You're just viewing it with no judgment, no good nor no bad. Just can see the human part of you on earth going through this experience. And your soul part has a lot of information about what's going on for you and why. And now we ask the soul, how is this situation trying to serve my soul's growth? How is what the human part of me is experiencing, how is that trying to serve my soul's larger growth? And then just listen and pay attention. Just listen and ask, what does my soul want? What does it want or need from this situation? What is the soul trying to learn through this human experience? What is the soul gaining by going through this? And what would help it to really grow through it? What does it need to do? Now let's look from the soul's eye perspective, from the past, the present, and the future. How does this make sense? How is this current experience trying to serve the soul in its growth forward? Ask your soul part if there's anything else that would be helpful for you to know about this experience your human self is going through. And ask, what do I need to do on a human level for my greatest growth forward? And now allow your consciousness to float down from that soul space. Allow it to drift down back to your human self and your human body. And allow your consciousness to settle neatly back into the human self. And with this awareness going forward, when I count to 3, you'll come into full awareness in the room. 1, take a nice deep breath and a great long exhale out. 2, take another nice deep breath and a great long exhale out. And 3 on the final bell. You'll take a nice deep breath, open your eyes, and come into full awareness in the room. I invite you to take out your notebooks and do a little bit of writing about your experience. Okay. So let's talk about it for a minute. What was that experience like for you?
I'll share.
Please.
I wanted to think about one thing, and my thoughts, not my soul, my thoughts wanted to think about something else.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, no, let's think about this. And it's like, no, we want to think about this. And I know my soul was like, whoa, wait a minute, we can think about, like, I know it's like, my mind is, they call it the chatter of the mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas my soul is like, okay, both of these things are very human things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it from above, you're not looking at it from like a soul perspective, meaning like those things that you're worrying about, that your mind is worried about, aren't really that important.
Uh-huh. And then how was, when you were able to look at it from the soul perspective, what was the guidance? What was important? What was the ways that these things are trying to help your soul to grow?
That's a tough question. So that's a very
that's one for the soul.
That's a very tough question. My soul to go. Lack of abundance. When I know that the universe has more than enough.
Okay.
And always has, had more than enough.
Okay.
I need to remember to be grateful, right? Because I think when I stop being grateful is when I start feeling anxious about the lack of whatever it is that I perceive as I'm lacking in.
Okay, so the soul is reminding you to stay focused in on the larger abundance of things, and that we're looking at it also as saying, my worry thoughts about money are purposeful. They are helping me to then realize that I have to learn about the abundance of the universe, right? Like that the rock in the river is a part of the river. Like the concern about money is I am wanting through my human life, my soul wants to learn that it lives in an abundant universe. It wants to learn how to embody that, how to practice that, how to live that, how to experience that. So that my soul is trying to learn that through my human life right now. Okay, great example. Who else wants to share?
I have a question. I'll let you say.
Okay.
I feel like I got a very clear answer and like direction on something, but it's not what I wanted.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. But it was very just like very concise, I feel like. Like seeing it from
Okay, I love when you don't get what you want, right?
No.
Not you personally, Kelly. I'm not like, Kelly, I love you. One day I was doing tarot cards with a client, and that's another conversation. Do not use tarot cards with your clients unless you know how to use it in a way that's ethical. And what I saw in front of me did not line up with what I thought. I was like, she told me about her daughter, and her daughter I was picturing in a certain way, and then I'm seeing these cards that say this child feels it feels like the magician. She feels like she has all the elements. She feels so powerful. I see an empress. I see the magician. I see the high priestess, and I said to myself, I'm sorry, I'm confused because the cards I'm looking at say your daughter has a lot of confidence and a lot of awareness of who she is and feels really powerful. And she said, yes, that's how she used to be. And that's the problem now. But when she came in, she just told me about the problem. So I'm picturing the problem. And the cards were telling me, like, this is who this person really is, right? So sometimes we can't see because our mind is thinking in a limited way. Like I'm thinking from this limited snapshot, not the cards. The cards saw the bigger picture, right? That's because it's bigger than me. So let's talk about when we ask for things and then we don't like what we get. Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. So years ago, this happens to just be one example that happened years ago. I'm sure I could give tons of examples of this, but I used to go out for a walk in the morning. When I would go out for a walk, I would ask to be of service. Good morning, guides. Good morning, angels. Please help me to be of service today. Please help me to be of service to the people that need it the most. Please help me to use any gifts, talents, or resources that I have to serve people that may need it. I really appreciate being in service. I know you'll help coordinate those things as part of my a morning walk that I would have. And since now we all have Bluetooth and everything, I no longer look crazy when I walk around talking about things like that, whereas I definitely used to look crazy. Right. It was in the middle at that time. I had two very small children. My kids are 2 years apart, so this is probably maybe 12 years ago. So I probably had a baby and a 2-year-old. And I was also doing a huge amount of construction on my house. And I was also working. So I came home. Of course, I've just prayed. I've asked to be of service. And my husband says to me, listen, so I know I'm going to be here today with the guys doing construction. And I know you're supposed to go to work later, whatever. But I was supposed to make them a barbecue lunch. And now it turns out they need me to go get materials for what they're building. So I was wondering, could you make them a barbecue lunch? And I'm like, temper tantrum is welling up. I have 2 little kids. I have to go to work. I already have my schedule laid out. I know what I'm supposed to do now, so I could get to work on time. I have the whole thing planned out. I'm like, why did you say that you would make them lunch, like a barbecue lunch, when then you can't even do it? And he's like, well, I was gonna, but now I have to get the material. And I'm like, fine. I get the stuff. Now I have to go buy groceries, come home, I'm making barbecue chicken, hamburgers, I made risotto. I don't know why I added that in. It's like a lot of work. It wasn't even good. And so I'm doing all these things, and as I'm making lunch, I think to myself, it hits me. It's like a VA moment. I said, this morning you went out and you prayed to be of service. Please let me be of service in any way you should see fit that would serve the universe, right? And I said, you prayed to be of service, and God asked you to serve lunch. And that's what you're doing, is you're serving lunch now. Like this, you had it in your mind, oh, it's going to be a kitten you rescue, or an old person from falling, or somebody with a major trauma, or you're going to give $100 to someone in the street that really needs it. God asked you to serve lunch. And I'm like, you and your ego is crazy. Your ego really thought that you knew what service was going to look like today, right? Mm-hmm. So then I said, okay, so we ask for what we want, but then we're like, no, sorry, not in that form, not like that. I'd prefer it this way, because our humanness is getting involved with a lot of opinions, instead of going, yes, I see I'm being asked to serve lunch. And so I made these guys lunch, and you've never met men feeling more loved and more delighted by having somebody make them a homemade lunch during the afternoon. Okay? So what I take from that, from my own story, is we don't know the right answer, but when we lean in, when we connect up, and when we ask, like, we possibly could try to trust the answer, instead of having the big ego that resists, right?
I think the non-physical part of you made the risotto. Because all the other was planned, and then the risotto.
Oh, I had to go out and buy all those things.
Oh, you bought the risotto.
No, I had to make the risotto. I had to buy everything. There was nothing in my house to make that lunch.
You added the risotto yourself, so that's what
I added all of it. I added the chicken. I added the hamburger.
I don't think of risotto as being barbecue, though.
It's not, but that's not at all relevant.
That's what she said.
And it wasn't good.
What I'm trying to say, you had this willfulness, but there was still a part of you that wanted to make something special, like, I'll add risotto.
Right. I'll add this thing that I have to slave over the stove until it becomes glutinous. You know, so amazing.
You were literally
right.
like, let's know what you are.
You were asked to serve lunch, right? That's service. Okay, so I love that you got something that was not what you wanted, because it then gives us an opportunity to say, wow, that must really not be just of me, because I would have said I wanted this, you know. What was your question?
So when I do these things, it's kind of like what I did, but a little different, but pretty similar. Like these automatic writings, it's weird because I get these like really strong messages and words, like there's rhyming themes in them, and it's so bizarre. And I don't know like why it's definitely not coming from me, but I'm like, I don't know. Has anybody have you ever heard
like, is your soul a rapper? Is that
it's weird, like
rain or pain.
It's all these words, and I'm just like, what the hell? And it happens all the time.
Why couldn't it be? Sure.
I don't know.
That's
so
the way your
bizarre.
soul likes to express itself to you, or in that case, it's your guides, right?
Yeah.
So we are making a distinction between those two, even though they're all co-creating. Yeah.
Maybe in a past life you were a poet.
And you just don't know it.
Right.
Shut up. That's what my brain sounds like.
Anybody else want to give feedback about what happens when they connected in with from the soul's eye view about their experience?
So I was trying to think about a particular topic, and at the same time, like, lightly falling asleep. And I was just like, something, because I was in like a soft mental state. I kept on seeing this like just purple eye shaped thing like go back and forth across and then stop right here. And I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna focus in on that. Like, even though I was like in that really like soft state, and just focus in on it. And then I think you started talking about something from above, and I was like, I could picture looking in at this purple thing, and then like but it was like an image of seeing the ground. You know what I mean? From like
Mm-hmm.
500 feet up.
Okay.
Because if you're looking out from a plane
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
and that's what came to me. But I was like, oh, this is really.
And then when you were viewing your human self, experiencing it,
Yeah.
and then when we were asking the questions like, how is my soul trying to grow?
Mhm.
What does my soul want me to do here? What does it need? How is this serving my soul's growth? Were you hearing from that? Were you seeing images? What were you gaining?
I was just sort of looking down at it, but then also being like, oh wow, this is happening right now. Like this, and I was just connecting with it, and it said stay with it. And sort of like wait for a message
Hmm.
this time. Like that was sort of like, it was like saying wait for the message.
Well, wait for the message.
Message, I'm on. And I'd be like, they wait.
You will serve lunch.
Way home.
Marianne.
For me, I felt like this energy, like it was like an external energy, like it was me, but I knew it wasn't physically me, it was like an external thing. And then I think the human self kept trying to focus on the problem of like why this is the way it is. But then my soul was like your ego needs to sit down. This is why this is this way, and you have to just see it for what it is rather than what you think it is or what you want it to be, or like problematize the thing or victimize yourself.
Yes. Right. So your soul was so aware of like just settle that down.
Yeah.
Just keep settling that down. And that can be the purpose of why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. So we learn how to settle that down. So remember the client that I had mentioned that I had permission to talk about this story. He's a person that's working on becoming an actor. He's been doing it for several years. When we first started working together, he felt frustrated that it wasn't moving as fast as he wanted it to, or having the results that he wanted to consistently. And he has a history of it as being an addict in the past. He's sober now. So when we did this exercise, he came out of it and he said, my soul was saying, like, you keep sticking with this. First of all, not only is it working, but the pursuit of acting is teaching you patience and teaching you how to transform. You've transformed by pursuing acting. It's not the acting itself. It's you pursuing the process of doing it and all the ways that you have to shift and grow to be an actor, to learn what to do, to go through the process that has transformed you. And acting is just basically the process through which you're doing that growth. So then he said, like, and that insight came from me, came from my soul. So it's more meaningful than just sort of hearing that idea outside of me, right? So it's my experience that, like, we have very repeated themes in our lives, and we each uniquely have like our own particular unique struggles. I don't know if you've noticed, but not everybody else struggles in exactly the way you do. And not everybody has strengths in exactly the way you do, right? So this particular client, again, that I have permission to talk about this particular client, I said, like, this is your soul's process. Like, this is what your soul wants to learn right now on the planet. Like, he applied a version of the personality of an addict, the black and white thinking, the needing immediate gratification, to acting. And then he's learning how to sort of let go of that way of being with life even more so through acting, and developing a type of contentment and trust that he never had before. So I was saying, like, that's what your soul wants. Perhaps let's just pretend for a second that there's previous lifetimes. Who knows, right? I believe in previous lifetimes, but I would never thrust that on a client. So, that's an invitation that if they want to take that, that's all right. So it's perhaps you've done so much work on other things. And I said, so what are the strengths in your life? And we're going to be talking about the strengths and challenges in a couple of minutes. And I said, you have a very easy relationship, a very loving, easy, symbiotic relationship with your wife. Like, zero challenges, best friends, easygoing. And he's like, yeah, I do. I'm not saying they never have had a challenge, but they work it out. That's an area that your soul doesn't need to grow right now. Doesn't need it. It may have already done it, or it's just not what will serve right now. And that relationship might be a platform that he could do this other work. And this other work is on growing as a human being in this way. And so, but through your acting and through wanting more creativity to come through you and having a platform to do it in life, that's where your soul needs to grow. But not in the area of love and a relationship, because that's pretty much just humming for you, right? So when you look around and you think like, okay, what are my challenges? What are my challenges? What are the things that are hard for me? What are the things that are hard for me? Or what are the things that they're unique to you? They're unique to your soul. Now, there are commonalities in humans. We share a lot of commonalities. You can always find other people that can relate to your things. But that's why yours and yours are not exactly the same, because you might have this issue that your soul is trying to grow through, and you might have this issue, and they're different, but they're unique to you. And that's why we could do this exercise every day. Every single day, you can look at any issue you had that day, any challenge, and then pop up into the soul's eye perspective and say, how is my soul wanting to grow through this? What does it want to gain through these types of experiences? And how can I listen to it and give it what it needs? How can I say yes to that growth versus resisting it? Any questions? Thoughts? All right. So in our pursuit of our own growth and the growth of our soul, then there's like other people in our lives. People that have their own journeys at the same time as ours, right? And we're going to be talking about trust, trusting ourselves, trusting others, trusting the universe. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. One of the things we want to kind of be aware of is that our inability to be able to tolerate other people's journey is because we do not have the ability to tolerate our own emotions. So it's a trap wanting to control or influence other people's lives in the ways that we do want to do it. It's just a trap. So I would say at least 50% of the time in my sessions, I'm trying to help a person to shift their energy off of focusing on somebody else and instead focusing on themselves. What can I do? What is within my empowerment, right? I know that makes sense to everybody here. But it is pretty normal and pretty natural to be focusing on the other person. What do they need to do? What should they have done? Why did they do it? Whatever. It's not the place of any of our empowerment. And so when we learn how to keep refocusing it towards ourselves, we see, oh, because this is for my soul's growth. Because I have an opportunity to grow, not because I'm trying to get them to change in some way, or them to do this, or them to see that, or whatever that might be. And so the piece that I want you to take from this, because there's plenty of stuff written in there that you can read on your own in the spiritual layer, the soul layer, all of that, is that we want to practice being able to tolerate our own feelings about what other people are doing on their journey. It's our inability to tolerate our emotions that make us want to control their journey. Like, we want to control other people's stuff so that we don't have to feel things that we don't want to feel. So the example that's given in here is the mother who has a child that's a drug addict, and she spends years trying to help him and save him from it. That's not what he wants, or that's not what he's saying yes to. Is that in my backyard? And so she eventually radically accepts that this is who he is and where he's at. And instead of trying to rescue him from his life, she goes and visits him on the park bench that he lives in and sleeps on every day. She visits him once a week there. Right? Like, for how many years was it hard for her to tolerate that this is what he was doing with his journey, until she eventually said, I can tolerate that, and then I'll go sit with him where he's at. Right? So we want to just sort of recognize that a big portion of why we want to control other people's behavior and the outside world is because we cannot tolerate the feelings on our own inner world. And that, again, is our soul's work.
I just want to share,
Yeah.
it reminds me of a client, she's an older woman, 73, and she says, you're only as happy as your happiest child.
Oh yes, that's a popular one. I hear that one all the time. You're only as happy as your unhappiest child.
So it's like, okay, well, good luck.
Right.
But yeah, like having to change that whole frame of thought
Yep.
because you're not going to be able to feel better.
That's right. If our feeling good is contingent on all of the things in the environment being in a particular way, we're in trouble. We are in some serious trouble. Hence, look around and look at the discontent, right? So actually, that's a perfect segue. Thank you, Paid. For talking about sort of the perfection in our own journey or the perfection in ourselves. So this is from the Untethered Soul. If you mistreat an animal, it becomes afraid. This is what has happened to your psyche. You've mistreated it by giving it a responsibility that is incomprehensible. Just stop for a moment and see what you've given your mind to do. You said to your mind, I want everyone to like me. I don't want anyone to speak badly of me. I want everything I say and do to be acceptable and pleasing to everyone. I don't want anyone to hurt me. I don't want anything to happen to me that I don't like. And I want everything to happen to me that I do like. Then you said, now, mind, figure out how to make every one of these things a reality, even if you have to think about it day and night. And of course, your mind said, I'm on the job. I'll work on it constantly. Right, like our contentment cannot hinge on everything being exactly the way we want it. For ourselves, for you have to be this way, you have to feel this way about me, you have to do these things, this has to go that way, that has to go that way. Otherwise, I refuse to be content. It means there will be no contentment, right? Contentment will be the last thing that is occurring for us. So as the honoring of the perfection of ourselves means honoring the perfection of other people's journey and also of our own, right? So if we recognize that the process is perfectly imperfect, there is no other way. There is no other way. It is perfectly imperfect. The creative universe has built you to expand, and if you expect that process of expansion to meet your standards of tidiness, perfection, linearness, all of the ways that you've demanded that it behave, this process of expansion, then you crush expansion itself. So like we have to find the way to lean in to what is not the way we thought it was going to be, not the way everything we prescribe it, not what we prefer, but instead lean into the rock and the river as just a part of what is versus getting in our way, versus it being a barrier to us. In recognizing that other people and circumstances and everything that's occurring may be things that our soul has helped coordinate in order for us to grow, then we can sort of arrive at this. This is from the Conscious Parent. Once you realize there are no enemies, only guides to inner growth, all who play a part in your life become mirrors of your forgotten self. Everything that's happening is a reflection of what you need, or where you're growing, or what you can say yes to grow. It's just, so what I'm about to say could be simple and refreshing, or hard and difficult. It's all for you. Everything you're experiencing is for you. Everything you're experiencing is for you.
Is that similar to the chapter in Your Badass about mirroring? Is it a similar idea?
I don't remember that chapter, so I'm not sure.
If something triggers you or bothers you in someone else, it's because you're battling with that within you.
100%. You're either battling it or you feel that you already achieved it and it is hard for you to look at it outside of you. It only triggers you. Things only trigger you because they are within you. Things only trigger you because they are within you.
But that does change it if there's a possibility that you achieved it. Because then it makes you second guess, like, am I now past that part, or is it?
The easiest way I can always think about this with a metaphor. There's nobody more judgmental of smokers than ex-smokers.
It's fine.
It's true.
Right? because they're like, I did it, why can't you do it? Like, that's so bad for you. Whatever's coming up in them, like, I was there, I don't want to be you anymore. I fear being you, therefore I must judge you.
Right, so then someone who's past that point will be able to address that with someone with compassion and empathy.
Right.
That's a really good example.
Yeah.
Because
Now,
you can see your
as a former smoker whose 33-year-old son now smokes and started like 10 years ago, I'm ready to kill him, right?
Yeah. You should kill him.
I'm ready to kill him right for smoking.
Just do it.
But I look at him and I really think when he smokes, I'm like, God is punishing me. God is punishing me for all the cigarettes I smoked when he was little.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please do the soul's eye view exercise on that 1,000,000 times. And you may not be being punished, but you may have something to grow or to learn.
Yes, I do. I have a lot of goals.
That's right. It is a trigger. Right. Okay. So speaking of trusting ourselves, there's a part in the tools that's about trusting yourself and trusting that you can handle life. We're going to sort of loop back to this in the spiritual level too. Okay, trusting that you can handle life. And also forgiving ourselves for choices that we've made so that we can bolster up our trust again. But where we're going to spend most of our time right now is actually on intuition and intuition development. So, Deepak Chopra said, intuition is a very interesting form of intelligence that goes beyond the rational mind. He explained how when you're experiencing intuition, your prefrontal cortex lights up, and this form of intelligence is relational, contextual, and holistic. Intuition is often described as a gut feeling or a process that enables us to know something without always having rational reason behind it. Intuition may bridge the gap between the conscious and the non-conscious parts of the mind, and also between instinct and reason. In essence, we need both instinct and reason to make the best possible decisions for ourselves. So intuition is very often thought of as like an inner knowing, an immediate insight, at being non-linear, not sort of following the constructs of time that we otherwise think of things with. And it's very personal and it's very subjective. It's very personal to each person, what that feels like, how they take in intuitive data, what they make of it, what their own intuitive sort of dictionary of symbols is. However, most of us are not taught much about intuition, or it is so, what's a good word, misunderstood, maybe spoken about in ways that are sort of cavalier and not maybe coming from a lot of concrete awareness or facts, that it could be kind of confusing. In the last couple of years, part of the zeitgeist in social media has been about the word intuition or intuitive. Nothing could be worse for a category than when it ends up on social media. Now, everybody's traumatized. You can't have 4 sentences with somebody without somebody using the word trauma. I know I've already mentioned that to you guys. Intuition is the same thing. Everything is this intuition, that intuition. And sadly, the more we sort of bring a lot of awareness to something, the further we may get away from the actual, true understanding of it. So it becomes each one of our responsibility, if we're interested in intuition, to see if we could really understand that deeper. Also, our intuitive hits at times in our lives are very often not, are either supported, not supported, or supported, or sometimes even punished or disregarded. And that influences the development of our intuition. So folks that have experienced a lot of trauma in their households or very difficult households very often have a higher level of intuition. It's sort of like this, so Deborah King, who wrote Truth Heals, her father sexually abused her for years, her mother was a dysfunctional parent. She wrote in her book, Truth Heals, "The shortfalls of my childhood put my nervous system on such high alert that I developed uncommon intuitive faculties. For survival reasons, I learned to read between the lines, so to speak." Right? So if we have to be hyper tuned into our environment for safety, that also can mean that we're tracking people. We're paying attention to the energy in the room. We're paying attention to eye movements, facial features, any movement that people are making. So the tuning in to other people and to the energy of the environment can sort of heighten our sort of being in a constant, this hypervigilance that is this sort of the downside of chronic or acute stress and trauma, can also be this great gift. Like, wow, like I'm really good at walking in a room and detecting energy. I'm really good at knowing when things have shifted. I'm really good when I feel like I know that somebody's not a good fit for me, right? Now, they may not always be right. That's a separate issue. That's a different category. That's called discernment. That's us being able to figure out if we're actually right. But tuning into the environment for safety reasons has this upside, which very often is like a more crystallized or maybe more tuned in awareness. Some people become empaths. An empath that knows how to protect themselves is a wonderful thing. An empath that is just a porous sponge walking through the world is in trouble. Okay, so that's the other word that's just everywhere. I'm an empath, I'm an empath, I'm an empath. I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody is empathetic. Everybody can be an empath. Everybody can be intuitive. It's not a badge of specialness. It's not a badge of specialness. It's just about what you're developing at the time, this time around, right now, right? Go ahead.
That's something interesting I noticed. People I worked with TBI in the past are extreme empaths, where they have this like intuitive knowing. Do you ever hear of that?
Yeah, so I would separate those two words. Are they intuitive or are they empaths? Meaning the empaths are feeling the energy of other people and not separating with a boundary between themselves and others.
Well, they speak telepathically to other people.
Okay, so that's different then. That's another that we would have put that in another category. So they're speaking telepathically to people. So that might be one category of things. Being an empath could be another category. Being intuitive, having a knowing about something without knowing how you're knowing it, would be like maybe another category. So how many people with TBIs did you work with that you experienced this? Okay.
Two with TBI. One was in the hospital, and she was an empath, and she spoke telepathically to a boyfriend. Another is a relative, and she knows things. Like she just knows things, and like somebody's gonna call, she knows it.
Okay, so
then
intuitive.
The third person does not have a TBI, but identify as an empath and speak telepathically to other people.
Okay.
So there's like a similarity.
Yep, there's similar, and there are two different skill sets that can have like an overlap. Those two. So there can be an upside to some of our challenges, right? Sort of we're leaning in on other senses. Or developing other senses. So I think for children, when they have sort of like intuitive awareness of things, we could do a better job of supporting them. But they don't always know what's really happening for them either, I would say. But also the reaction that we get from the environment when we are being perhaps intuitive is helps to shape whether we feel comfortable doing more of that or not, right? So when I was younger and I was in the 4th grade, I was in chorus, and my chorus teacher said to everybody, for this year's concert, where everybody's going to submit the name of the band, like the name for our chorus, like what the name of our chorus is going to be this year, and whoever that person is going to get a gift from me. So everybody's going to submit a name, and he only got about 4 words deep into that sentence before the name that I was going to say dropped in. I don't even think he said the whole contest yet. It was just there. And so I knew what I was going to say, and it was like, boop, it was like somebody said it in my head, dropped in. Yeah. Put the name down. I also knew I was going to win. I put the name down, put it in, And then the next week we came back, and a couple of things happened. One is he said, thanks everybody for your submission for all the things. There was one name that was so amazing, that was so great. It stood out from the rest of them. And then so many of your suggestions were ridiculous. So right there, I'm thinking, this is not good. Because he's criticizing people for their creativity. Then he says, the person who won is Beth Miller. The name she gave it is the fourth dimension for the fourth grade course. So he says, now I'm a little embarrassed that I won, right? Because he put the other people down. So I'm standing out in a way that feels not good to me, right? I won a Smurf. It was a mechanical Smurf. You push the bottom, it bent over. Yeah. I came home, I told my mom about it. I said, I won this contest for this thing. She said, what'd you call it? She said, what was the name you submitted? I said, the fourth dimension. She said, did you know that there was a very popular band called the Fifth Dimension? I said, no, I have no idea. She said, where'd you get that name from? I said, I have no idea, it just popped in my head. We went to the concert a month later. Everybody in the audience, now the teacher tells the same story in front of everybody, like 200 people. I got so many terrible names, so many, I think he gave examples of the ones that he thought were laughable too.
That's terrible.
But one stood out, one was amazing. And he says the name, which was mine, and I hear parents going, she didn't make that up herself. She didn't do that. Her parents told her that name. Somebody gave her that name. And I'm thinking, I wish I never said anything, right? Now, it's not like I have survived past that moment. For me, it was a great example of an idea dropped into me. I have no idea where it came from. It just was there. I offered it, and there was a lot of weird stuff that happened because of that. Like parents thinking you couldn't possibly know that. Nobody ever thought, or nobody said out loud, wow, she just came up with a cool idea. Or I wonder if that intuitively dropped in. Or I wonder if her spirit guide gave her that name, right? Nobody suggested that is where it could come. I don't know where it came from. I wasn't sitting down trying to come up with names for hours. I don't know, right? So let's think about kind of when stuff just drops in to ourselves or to our kids, like, how do we want to manage that? How do we want to support that? It's just something for us to think about. Okay.
How do we want to hone it?
How do we want to hone it? Right. Yeah, like
One time my friend sent me, she never writes, and she wrote poetry, and she wrote a poem about a father who was deceased. And as I'm talking to her on the phone, no reason at all, I go to a book that I haven't picked up in forever, When God Whispers. I open it up to the chapters, and says Michelle's poem. I have no idea why. And I turn to the poem, and the poem is this, it's kind of reflective of a grandfather and a granddaughter, but it was very similar to her experience.
right. So it's just like, right? So can we become more reverent of those things, but in a way that has deference, but also normalizes it? Can we start normalizing this more in our lives and in the lives of others? So here's one quote that relates to that. The truth is that everyone has some psychic ability, but it might be trapped under some heavy expectations about what you think a psychic ability should look like or feel like. Most people thinking having psychic ability is actually bigger than it is, and that it's their downfall, or that it's what's really special about them. Everyone has natural intuitive ability. So it's not a question of whether you have it or not. It's a question of how open you are to using it. Right? Just about spending time with it, developing it, having reference for it, but not deference for it, but not ego around it. Right. So there's 8 different types of clairs. Does anybody know what I mean when I say clairs? Yeah. Okay.
They're
Yep. Clairaudient, clairsentience, clairgustance, that's the ability to taste something. Clairalience, that's clear smelling. Clair agency or psychometry, which is clear touching of things. Right? And so these different clairs are the ways that we might realize how we receive data. And everybody probably has some. The cool thing is, if you want to develop more of it, you probably can. So if you want to become better at being intuitive and using your senses as the way to receive information and data, you can. Right? It's just about putting effort into it, and it will happen.
And being present.
And being present. So it requires some things. So let's take a look at what intuition is and what it is not, and we're going to do some practicing together. Intuition is access from a calm, wise, grounded state. It sprouts from a state of calm and detached mindfulness. It may have an energy of feeling curious, interesting, matter of fact, or reassuring. It is non-judgmental. It may feel like information that comes out of nowhere and may not feel relevant immediately. It may feel like a still, calm voice, a gentle nudging, a feeling of rightness or knowing, a fleeting smell or taste, a physical feeling that comes and leaves, a quick flash of information. It can be a subtle energy that can easily be ignored. It cannot be forced. It must be developed and nurtured. And it does not ensure that you will not have challenges or make mistakes. A lot of people want to develop their intuition more because they want to
Gamble and win.
gamble and win. I never even thought of that one. It was great. What else? And what? Make the right decisions.
Not make mistakes.
Not make mistakes. Like if I develop my intuition more, I won't date the wrong guys. I won't have this mistake. I'll have all this success in business. Is that true?
No.
Okay, why is that not true? Just because you develop your intuition more.
It's increasing the likelihood though, like if you relate it to wise mind, like your wise mind is your intuitive knowing.
That's right.
It evaluates it.
So you could increase your likelihood of possibly making wise choices for yourself. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you eliminate pain from your life or challenges that might come your way?
No. You just change the way you respond to them.
Right. So, and that you will see those things as a part of your soul's growth versus things that are happening to you.
Right.
Right? Okay, so becoming more intuitive and developing your senses, your clairsenses, gives you more information to work with. But it does not guarantee that you will not have life challenges. Why am I saying that? Why am I bothering to say what sounds super obvious, but somehow isn't?
Not going to be obvious to everyone.
Right.
Like, somebody's going to
Take it to the bank, like, yeah.
Right. Because sometimes that's our reason for wanting to develop our intuition, is that we think that we're going to then be able to avoid challenges and mistakes, right?
I suppose your ego gets involved and then you think it's your intuition, but it's your ego saying, I know this, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
You confuse it, like I intuitively know this, but
Yeah.
it's just your ego saying.
Yeah. How many people here ever do tarot cards or oracle cards? Yeah. How often do you think you have influenced your own reading? Raise your hand. you are influencing your own reading.
This card should have been.
You are influencing your own reading. Right?
Feel that one though.
Okay. What intuition is not or does not. It does not feel like strong or intense emotions.
No.
It is not fear-based. It is not anxiety or worry. That's I would say the number one question I get about intuition is like, how do I know it's that, like, is this my fear or is this intuition? If it feels like fear and worry, it's not intuition. It's not just a guess. Well, my intuition says that is not intuition. That's a guess. I'm guessing. It's okay to say I'm guessing. Well, I'm taking a wild guess. That's fine. But guessing is not the same as intuition.
Intuition is like knowing. Like I know this is going to happen.
It's
I
a
know.
feeling of knowing, that's right. It's a feeling of some kind of clear knowing.
Can I share that I have a friend,
we call her crybaby psychic, because when she has a, she starts crying, and then she'll know somebody's name, and people go, oh my God, that's my mother, or
Right.
but it's really annoying if you go like camp to the casino with her.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling this one, Jean. I would move away from her. Should I listen to her?
Yes.
I'm not crying.
Show me your tears. It should not be used cavalierly in a sentence such as intuitively I think or intuitively I'm just coming from. No. It is not thinking. It is not a way to be special or a way to promote your ego. And it is not permission to break other people's boundaries or violate their privacy.
When I was in my recent spiral,
I just wonder how we're doing. Are you about to enter a new one or are we good?
She's very calm.
I think the main signal was I realized something was wrong because I couldn't feel that feeling. And I guess I didn't realize I had that feeling until it didn't exist anymore. So I was making a lot of big choices. And I was like, I can't get a sense, I can't get a read on anything. And I'm not like that. So then I was like, oh, I'm effed up. Like something's wrong.
Yeah.
That was how I figured it out. So when I started to feel it back, I was like, oh, okay.
Neat.
This is
Neat.
good.
Interesting.
So, like, what's the way back?
What do you mean?
How do you get that feeling back?
I don't know. I just had to go through it.
Okay.
I
Get really emotional.
I had to stop resisting, I think, the spiral that I was in and just like accept it. And the more I verbalized it, I was like, oh, I'm not okay. I never say that to people. I started using that phrase of salt for my coworker, who says it all the time. She's like, I'm really not okay with everybody. I started saying that. And the more I was like getting it out, I was like, oh, okay.
Interesting.
It took like 3 months.
Yeah.
3 long months.
Yeah. So your soul really required that you be out loud about what was vulnerable for you in order to be able to and also accept that you were not okay and in a spiral in order to be able to grow through that. And then you also gained recognizing that more often than not you do feel in a more connected intuitive state and that you were not because you were in such an emotionally driven state. So you could experience the difference between the two. Okay, awesome. So what do you think the number one way to develop your intuition is?
Meditation.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I usually think on something, and if I can see it really clear, which is probably meditating, like if I can envision like a project or something I'm gonna do, and it just shows itself, then I act on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am trying to think on something or trying to get a read on something and it doesn't show itself, then I'm just saying, okay, this isn't what's happening.
Okay, so you're saying that that might be sort of part of your own kind of visualization process too, right? So the number one way to develop your intuition is to become quiet
That's what I was going to say.
more
Sit.
frequently, like
Sit.
a lot of quietness.
Mhm.
I don't think you should expect to develop your intuitive capabilities without becoming more quiet, a lot more quiet, because, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the Angels and Guides section too. This is subtle energy. It's subtle. So intuition may occasionally be like a megaphone, just like angels and guides may occasionally come at you like a megaphone. More often than not, it's very subtle. And the way that you start discovering how much intuitive data you might already be picking up on through your senses is one, figuring out what senses you're strongest in. And then also is through discernment, is in being able to ask and follow up so that you could start discovering how your own system shows you data. But if you are not doing that and you're not doing that quietly, then it's very hard to develop intuition.
Can I?
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting, and even before the class started, the growth that's exactly, so for me, my big move for like 3-4 years before, I would have the anxiety, I'd be like just so unsettled, and then when I finally hit that point of like making a decision, I would get like messages. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning and I'd hear something, and my message was, and I felt such an ease, and there was never anxiety, and it was like, book a flight Columbus Day weekend. And I booked a flight Columbus Day weekend. I said, I woke up and said, I'm booking a flight. Okay. And every step I took, I would get a message and I would hear it. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning. Everything I did, boom, boom, boom. So it's weird. But being quiet was the thing. Like I never was a quieted mind. And that's why, like even before when I was talking about like this thing I was showing you guys, like when you finally calm down and let all your fears be quiet and you sit, there's like a whole nother world that we miss out on.
Yeah.
A huge.
Yeah, that's right.
Huge.
That's right. That's right. I decided years ago that I wanted to become more intuitive. That was a choice that I made. And I say that to you because you can make that choice. And maybe you've already made that choice. And then putting the practice of skill development behind it. It's just sort of like, okay, I want to become more psychic. I want to be more intuitive. I want to do that. Okay, what do I need to do? How do I start practicing that more?
Did you ever notice, like, you could, like, if you feel someone else's energy, and I don't know how to say it. Like okay, let's say you could feel someone is angry, and you know this person's angry, but when you talk to them about it, they're like, I'm not angry. But meanwhile, they're oozing fury.
Yeah.
So sometimes they're not even aware of it, right? Or are you having a wrong intuition? Are you having like a wrong sense of the situation? Sometimes it's so...
I don't know if that's intuition. I think that's just like people have, our systems are scanning and taking in so much data to be able to understand what's happening around us. So if we see facial gestures that look like anger, or if we see tightness and guardedness that looks like anger, it's going to compute in us as anger.
Sometimes it's just, you don't even have to see the person, you can feel it.
Yeah. Right. So if you were to say to somebody like, hey, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm okay. You might be like, I feel like something's a little funky with that person, right? And then you might sort of just note it in yourself. And then maybe in 2 days they come back to you and they're like, listen, I've been really off lately. I'm really angry or something. The thing that we want to try not to do is be like, intuitively, I know this person's angry, right? Because this is where we start violating boundaries with our anger. Like, I know you're angry. I can feel it, right?
I do that too.
People do this to each other, right? You do that to people?
I do it to Lou.
Oh.
He has this annoying defense mechanism, like when he's mad, he'll go, ha ha ha, like he'll laugh, and I'm like, you totally don't think that's funny, you're mad about that, and he's like, no, I'm not, and I just know he is, and I can't resist.
Right.
Because it's annoying.
But it's
it doesn't
also
feel authentic, it's like just...
That's right.
Really,
but for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about intuition, that's probably not intuition. Remember, intuition is data that you know that like doesn't have a reasonable reason for you knowing it. You know this guy. You live with him. You know his defenses. You know when he gives you a bullshit laugh when he's really pissed off at something, right? Yeah. Like that's data. That's real information that we've taken in, and this machine inside of us is constantly computing it, right? Which is different than intuition, which would be like we don't necessarily know the source or why we know that information. Right, so like crybaby psychic, she sometimes knows things she has no business knowing. Like who knows where it came from? She doesn't have any connection with that person. That's more intuitive or psychic data, right?
Crybaby psychic on me.
Okay.
On shit that there's no way anyone in the world.
There you go. Right, that's right.
Yeah.
So when I say that as you know, because of how much I believe in boundaries, I'm like repetitively talking about boundaries. It's very clear that I'm really concerned about how people think that once they have intuitive information that gives them permission to violate somebody's boundaries. It does not.
Can you give an example of violating someone? Or like telling
Your
them
friend,
what you know
right?
and they need to listen to you?
Oh, like when the woman, she was just getting a massage and the woman told her like, oh, you should you should cut all your hair off because
okay.
you're carrying energy from a past life.
Mm-hmm.
You know that psychic from the show, Teresa the blonde one?
Oh, gosh.
Okay. So now listen, that's a television show and they have that scripted whatever way they have it. But I believe that if you're in a supermarket and you're buying pears and then somebody comes up to you and says, I want to tell you about your father right now, I believe that's a violation of your boundaries. Unless you say to somebody, I happen to be a psychic, I'm getting information, would you like it? Would you like me to share it with you? Like, that is a respect for boundaries.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so let's say you're picking up information about someone that maybe they have a hard time accepting. Can you like ask them questions to sort of get them to come to that realization?
Yes.
So I have things come up for friends and I'm like, I don't wanna say anything.
That's right. Yeah.
Does that resonate? Like, what's going
That's
on?
exactly right. So instead of us being like, my intuition tells me that you have an issue with this, right? Because it's like, who's that making it about?
Yeah.
Me. I'm so special. I have intuition. I'm picking up on this. It's about me. It's not about you. It's not about what's happening for you. It's about me. But if it's like, okay, I'm getting some, like, I feel like in our conversations, I'm getting some feelings like this person has an issue with their self-confidence or they have an issue that happened with her, then you can ask questions that are gently giving them the opportunity, like a welcome mat to step through for them to talk about it. Yes. And that is the difference between using intuition in your therapy or coaching sessions versus feeling like you're going to do a reading on somebody because that's what you want to do. It's the difference between being ethical and unethical.
For you personally, when you started honing your intuition or trying to practice, have you gotten a lot of growth? Like, are you a psychic? Are you psychic?
So I'm resistant to words like that myself because I feel like I personally feel like it creates a labeling that that needs to make me special in some way. Whereas I feel more comfortable saying, when I put more effort into these things, I'm able to do those things more, and that just gives me more information about the world. That's just what feels comfortable for me.
I guess what I'm trying to find out is over time, did it really enhance through practice?
Yes. So let me give you a couple of examples of that. So as I got quieter and as I also learned how to tune in more to my own senses, meaning like in my, which we're not going to be able to do that in this training, but in like the communicating deeper with your angels and guides workshops that I do, we spend weeks where we sort of are learning more about what senses we're strongest in. And by starting to learn, like all of those senses may be may have some capability, but some might be stronger than others. And that's been my experience. So I help people identify those senses, and then I help them to start using those to be able to be their main bridges of communication between their intuition or their angels and guides. So the clairs. So in my own experience, and this only happens basically because of in my intention, the effort. In other words, I'm demonstrating that probably all people have access to do these things. The following things happen. So, for example, I used to run a positive energy group every week with a group of women, and I asked them to do a meditation, and the meditation was on what is a way that you can show somebody love in your life. So then as we're sitting there and everybody's doing their meditation, afterwards, when we've completed it, so during the meditation, I started feeling like I was eating an egg sandwich. I hate egg sandwiches. I know I'm like the only Long Islander that's ever said that, but I really dislike them. I don't like anything about them. And they have a very strong smell and taste to me. And I could smell it in my nose and I could taste it in my mouth. So I, after we finished the meditation, I went around the room and said, like, what was coming up for you? And people were saying, oh, like here, I decided I was going to write my daughter a card or whatever. And I said, I had the strangest thing. I felt like I was eating an egg sandwich. And I dislike egg sandwiches, so it was very pungent to me. Does that resonate for anybody? And the woman who was next to me said, I was thinking I could make my husband an egg sandwich as an act of love towards him in the morning for breakfast. I had no idea that I had clairgustance until that moment. And I was like, how often am I tasting foods in my mouth that I just let go?
Hopefully the calories don't count.
It happened to me. Is this a way for me to not eat those things? Could you eat chocolate cake and I just taste it in my mouth? I don't know. I had it the other day with pickles in the gym, and I'm like, there's 100 people here. I have no idea who this is relevant to. I'm going to let that go, right? So I didn't know that existed until I was quiet enough to pay attention. I had been doing work on myself in this way. And then I also noticed that it happened with another person at that time, where I was doing a phone session with them, so I wasn't in their physical proximity. And I started tasting like I was eating butter cookies, which I do love. And I said, I'm just noticing that I have the taste of butter cookies. This is a very spiritual person. This is also, she's psychic. So we've done a lot of different types of healing work together separate from this. And so we have a type of permission in our relationship to do those things. And so I said, and she said, oh, well, I made butter cookies yesterday, but more importantly, it relates to what we're talking about because my grandmother was like my spiritual teacher, and she's the one that would have helped me with this issue. So, right, where does that come from? That's
What does that have to do with butter cookies?
her grandmother made butter cookies, which is why she made them with her daughter the next day, the day before. So how often is that happening? I don't know, but now that I'm aware of it, when I smell things and taste things, I do become more curious. But intuitive data passes, comes in, it goes out. Most of it, you're not noticing it. Most of it is not that relevant. It moves on, right? Like you get information from something and then it moves on, and it's not that important. Now, perhaps a client comes into session. Again, you're only doing this with like people that you know that you have the right kind of permissions with. And client comes in, I get a toothache. I didn't have a toothache 5 minutes ago, now I have a toothache. So that to me is like, is this relevant? Is this important information for me? So I might say like, how have you been feeling? How does your physical body feel? I went to the dentist today, so everything's really swollen. Okay, now I'm thinking, is that just information to say like we're connected in this moment, or is there anything else that I need to know? And if there's nothing else, then I clear my system. Thank you, I let that go. I don't want to feel your system. I don't want to be in your physical body. I don't want to take with me anything about your physical body. So then I just say, and now I let that go, and now I just want to be in my physical body, because that's where I'm going to have the greatest amount of strength and the greatest amount of cleanness and clarity.
So with people, like if like a workman comes in the house or something, sometimes I'll feel like the hair is gonna stand up on my head. And I'll be like, oh, I don't want this guy, I don't want this person here, they gotta get out of my head.
Right. Yes. So there's a lot of data that we're probably getting that we might not be realizing what it is. And so if we want to develop more awareness, then we're going to be developing also what I call is through discernment. So I don't call it discernment, it's known as discernment, but discernment is being able to check to see if you were right, to see if the intuitive data is right. So I was able in that group to check. I tasted a strange egg sandwich. I think they're really gross. Does that relate to anybody here? If everybody said no, I let it go. Maybe the next day somebody says to me, guess what? I decided to tell my whole family to make me egg sandwiches because that's how they could show me that they love me. And then that information might come back to me and I'll go, oh, discernment. I see that intuitive hit was correct. But maybe there's no confirmation about it. It was right, it was wrong, who knows, it passes, right? So there's times when we're going to get, I did like a psychic development class with somebody. They had us touch people, like stand there and like touch, I think hold hands. I got pictures. There's the way I see pictures is sort of like, it's almost like they're light shadows. Picture of a horseback riding, picture of an injury, picture of something about the gym, picture of something else. So, I mean, we're in psychic development class. You're supposed to then report what you got. So I said, this is what I got. She said, oh, I was horseback riding, I fell, and now I have to go to physical therapy. I have an injury for it, I can't go to the gym anymore, right? So the information that she gave then gave me information that says a lot of times those pictures that you get when you close your eyes in that way are correct. But then you develop a dictionary, a dictionary of symbols. So you might learn that you get a lot of information by hearing. It might be sort of your clairaudience. So you might learn like, oh, when I hear high-pitched ringing in my right ear, that's information that says pause. Take a breath, and then notice for a minute what's happening, because your angels are trying to communicate with you. They're asking you to pause. Or you might get chills, and you say, oh, that's my symbol for confirmation. Or when I feel them playing with my hair like this, then I go, oh, that's my moment to let them, to see if I can help my client connect with their highest selves. Right? So you start developing a dictionary of symbols about how it's personal to you, like how are your senses taking in information and what do they mean? And that's part of the practice of developing this skill.
Is there such a skill as a conduit, like an in-between person, that's what their skill is?
When you say conduit, you mean?
Like the messenger, like that's happened to me, where crybaby psychic would be like, tell her about the bear, and then I'll be the one to say, is there anything about a bear? And then she'll say, yeah, I have to tell Todd to remember to get the bear upstate, like things like that.
It could.
I'm the middle person.
So it sounds like I don't know if it's a skill, but it sounds like it's a role. It sounds like being a messenger is part of a role that you like, that you're saying yes to, and that seems to be effective.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was any.
So, a lot of times I see like somebody's relative, if I'm talking to them, not always, and I'll sit there and I usually never ever say anything because I don't want to get into that conversation because they're not selling me anything. They're not saying, hey, there's this family heirloom. It's just the person will kind of like be there, and then I'll like somehow get their name. So on a very like rare occasion, I'll sort of be like, is there any way you have like a grandma Evelyn or something like that? And I'll be like, yeah. She didn't say anything. I just wanted to check.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. And does that serve the person in front of you?
Right. And so typically no, which is why I never like say it.
Okay.
Like, hey, you know.
But so you're doing acts of discernment where you're like, okay, when I hear somebody's name, a lot of times I get names correctly.
Yeah.
Right? I get names completely incorrectly. I'm almost always wrong on names. So I do not rely on that at all. You know what I mean? And I've met other psychics that get names wrong. So I'm like, yep, not my thing. I don't know why.
But just like, you know, and again, like, you know, to my boyfriend, like his grandmother shows up all the time. I'm like, she's not saying anything. I just want to let you know she's here. Just because I want to see if like you do have a grandmother name. Blah, blah, blah.
That's right. So that's discernment. Mm-hmm. And we can do checks on discernment in safe environments, like your boyfriend or somebody else that's a friend that you can ask, that you know it's not going to violate their boundaries. It's not somebody that you're just, you know, showing off your party tricks in front of. That it's people that you can do that with that are going to feel respected and safe and boundaried while you do it, right? And it's through discernment that you get to understand more about your own intuition, your own clairs, your own body, how you're taking in data, etc.
And is that an opportunity? Like, is that something I could develop, or is that something?
That is something you can develop.
Okay.
So I don't consider myself a medium by any stretch, but I have plenty of moments like that, and one of the things I always ask people if they come through in a session that the person has passed is I always want to know what they do all day. I'm like, what do you do all day? And then and it's really neat to hear what they say. So this person, I could see what he was doing. He was sitting down reading the paper and in a robe, and he was drinking coffee. So I reported that to the person that was sitting with me, and she said, oh, we used to call him Sunday Mike, because he used to just sit in his robe and drink coffee and read the paper all day, just be easygoing and slow going all day, right? Another person I saw windsurfing on energy. I shared that with the person. He was a windsurfer in real life, right? So can that be developed? Sure. Are there people that naturally have those skills really strong from like the get? Yes. So I encourage any of you, if you want to develop those skills, that everybody's intuitive. Everybody can.
Were you really excited when it first happened for you? Or did you notice it?
I don't feel like I do get really excited. Is that a bummer? Is that like, no. I feel like I'm like, that's neat. I feel like that's neat. That's
It
neat.
is neat.
That's cool.
What would you do if you want to learn to like what's next if you want to start exploring, like especially like Michelle or like anybody
Yeah.
else?
So that would be mediumship development.
Right.
The things I'm talking about is intuition development or psychic development. Not that there's not
They're so
overlaps,
different,
but there's differences between them. And you have to take classes.
Yeah.
I mean, read books. I've gone into people like Laura Day's books. I used to go and read her books, went into the city for workshops with her, and just learn as much as you can, and then practice and be quiet. And like I said, I can't teach you everything about developing those clairsentience, the clairs right now, but maybe we could do it sometime in the future. Okay, so I would like us to take a quick break. So that we could come back in and do some intuition development exercises with you guys, okay? So, like 5 minutes would be great. Just go in, use the restroom, and come on back.
By any chance have 2 Band-Aids?
2 Band-Aids.
Just one.
There's a Band-Aid here.
Yeah, it is, right? I'm so sorry, I've been looking at my passport and I couldn't find it. I don't even know it. I couldn't find it in my passport.
You found your Band-Aids?
Well, no, it fell off, that's why I used one. But I was looking for it in my pants, but I couldn't find it because it was on the floor.
I think they're here. You have something. Yes. I can feel it. I'm so curious. I'm not gonna say that was my favorite. When I was in prison, so many crying. I think about it. I just feel it and you feel it. I know, I feel like it's. Well, feel free to practice on me. I know, right? I just know. I love that about you. I'm just letting you know we're gonna have to figure out like once you're feeling homeless. I think we should. I don't want to like you. I'm gonna miss you.
So if they stay friends.
Oh my gosh, look at this.
Picture.
This is a cornucopia of Band-Aids. I have so many Band-Aids.
Tiffany and I promise
So
to do
nice.
twice a month. Like we'll do a book today.
I know.
And then like talk about it. So it'll be kind of fun.
Listen, I think we should connect to even if we have us on Zoom sometimes.
I think that would be fun.
That would be fun, right?
Because, yeah, it's it sounds great to be like, hey, we can go meet once a year.
It's
so
hard.
to do.
It's
so
never
hard to
happen
do with
whenever it's
family.
schedules.
Yeah, it's so hard
Yeah.
to do with
Maybe we do it that way. I need to go home. I need to rest a little.
What's going on? You just got cold or?
No, I don't know. I've been out of work for 2 days. It moved from my head into my chest now, so I need to.
You might be getting pneumonia.
I need to take a nap.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Oh, I should go there. I have plantar fasciitis and like I'm dying right now.
No.
Do I go down? Do I go down?
Oh, no.
You know, it was like, well, that's what I was standing up. Oh my god, my foot's tingling when I ring it. Once I start walking, it's fine though. Did you ever go to the PT for anything?
Not PT.
And they give you like some
My shoulder. Yes, that's PT, right?
Yeah, they give you like stupid exercise and you're like, I'm not coming back. That's all.
I'm not doing this show. I'll do it myself.
I'll just do myself. I'm not coming back and spending an hour, $99.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but that was one of the things. They just started making
Yeah.
I spent an entire summer trying to teach myself to roll my tongue, and I don't use that for anything.
No, I think, yeah.
It's warmer in here, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird.
I
More
think,
bodies.
I think bring me up more for this cooler. I'm tired.
It's a little bit more close.
Yeah. I'm ready for a nap.
It's weird, the heat here is different than in North Carolina. Like, it's hot.
Is it?
But it's actually, no, it's worse here. Okay.
We were talking about going to the banks. Are you anywhere close to that?
I think I'm about an hour and 45 minutes.
Because I know you're in
That's not
Boston.
bad.
Do
You
you
fly
fly
into
and you must not like.
Raleigh, Durham.
Yeah, no, I know, I don't text you, I think my phone here,
Really
really
short.
where that you turn it
Depends
on.
where you're going.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I only turn on my phone if I really.
bus or something.
Like
I don't
turn
know.
on.
Do it
I
once.
don't even know
Yeah.
where that is. You have to walk.
Yes,
I mean, for you to drive, it's probably like, I don't think I would drive.
Longer breaks.
I think I would fly.
It's that's fine. You're gonna miss the intuition development exercises that we're gonna do, which is totally fine. But yes, please, you can go sit outside, go do whatever you want to do, okay? Oh my gosh.